Esa para que está buena.
Hello, my Toneful friends. How are ya? Happy Cinco de Mayo. And by the way, I had somebody accuse me of cultural appropriation. And I don't mean any harm to anybody, and I hope you know that. I'm enjoying it's Tuesday and it's Cinco de Mayo. And when I was playing gigs, I would be out there at some bar somewhere while people were probably indulging pretty heavily. So I'm here with you tonight and really looking forward to being here with my friend Vito DiSalvo. But before we go there, I want to say hello to some people. I did get to say hi in the chat, but I did see Tal. Tal is here. Tal Fowler, how you doing, buddy? All the way from the West Coast. He's in Seattle. Scott Lusk is here, all the way from Washington, PA, little Washington. All right, great to see you guys. And I did see Wayne. I think Wayne's got everybody beat as far as the travel. He's here from the UK, so that's pretty cool. Mike Panich is here. My wife is here. Let's see who else. I'm not going to stay on real long at the front end here because I have a lot to talk about, I should say, with Vito. He's a very wonderful and interesting fellow. So he's coming up. I have a couple things I need to tell you prior to that. But anyway, I'm wishing you guys a wonderful Cinco de Mayo, okay? And by the way, I would never mean any harm to anybody. In fact, I would say my top two favorite foods, Italian and Mexican food. Those are my top two. So I think Chinese is probably third for me. Anyway, hope you guys are well. Do have to tell you this. I have my song Winter Park is coming out onto the streaming platforms on the 15th. So if you go here, I'll put a link in the comments and do a pre-save. That would be great because that helps me out. It helps the song get noticed a bit more. So that would be really, really cool if you'd do that, okay? And also, there will be links to the store and to my Spotify. And there you go. All right, I'm going to look at the chat real quick. And I do see some people are here. They're not making comments. But hello to all you people out there that are lurking. And that's okay. If you get a chance, though, I'd love you to say hello. And I have to tell you about my upcoming guests, okay? Real quick. So here's what's happening. Next week, I have the wonderful Billy Price on. Billy Price. You guys know him. He's wonderful. Blues and soul. Curtis Swift, my dear friend Curtis Swift. We worked together for so many years. My goodness, I'm so thankful for him. He'll be on following that. Then Reggie Jackson, not the baseball player. No, Reggie Jackson's a great drummer. He's a great drummer, and he'll be on with me. And then I have my friend Jamie Glaser, who's a great musician, great guitarist, keyboardist. He's played with so many people, including Jean-Luc Ponty, Chick Corea, and John Anderson from Yes. So he's coming on. And then my friend Tom Hemby, killer guitar player as well, from the Nashville scene. He's played with Amy Grant, Vince Gill, and done countless number of sessions. So he's wonderful. And then after that, my friend Gumby Ortiz. He is the percussionist and the right-hand man of wonderful guitarist Al Di Meola. All right? Then I have Bobby Floyd. Bobby Floyd is a killer B3 player. He plays B3 and piano. He's played with Ray Charles and the Count Basie Orchestra, among many others, and he's a wonderful musician. He'll be on. And then my dear friend Don Alico Jr., we've known each other a long, long time. Terrific saxophonist. He's living in the Tennessee area near Nashville, okay? So that is what's happening coming up. And hope you tune in for those. But tonight, we have Vito DiSalvo coming up, all right? Before I get to Vito, I got to tell you about Billy next week. Coming up Tuesday, May 12th on my YouTube channel, Toneful Tuesdays welcomes award-winning soul blues vocalist Billy Price. Billy first gained national attention singing with the legendary guitarist Roy Buchanan and went on to build an incredible career with the Keystone Rhythm Band, the Billy Price Band, and many solo projects. We'll talk about his journey, his music, our shared memories, and his brand new album, Random Madness. Join us for a great conversation with my friend Billy Price. That's Tuesday, May 12th at 7 p.m. on my YouTube channel. All right, so that's next week. Now, I did see a couple people I want to say hello to, and then we're going to get right to this stuff with Vito. I saw Vicky Augustine. Hello, Vicky. How are you? Great to see you. And also my friend Mike Bozick. And I do want to send a special thanks to Daniel last week. He gave me a really nice buy me a coffee, so that helps out a lot. So thank you, Daniel. Okay. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy Vito. He's wonderful, and I'm so thankful he's here with me. And you're going to enjoy him. He is awesome.
La 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 la.
Before we get to tonight's interview, I'd like to take a moment to introduce my guest and friend, Vito DiSalvo. Vito is an accomplished accordionist, pianist, composer, conductor, producer, arranger, and educator whose career has spanned more than 5 decades. Born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he studied music at Duquesne University and later earned his Master of Music degree from the University of Miami in music theory and composition.
You can't learn Italian like this. You don't speak the language just with your mouth. You speak it with your hands.
Oh.
Gesti.
Like this?
Con i gesti.
I gesti.
Con i gesti.
Non lo sai.
Okay,
Non hai capito.
he's a yelling.
Braccia, gesticolare. Com'era?
All this gives me stomach.
Buona.
Vaffanculo, che fai?
I think that's my neighbor Lorenzo.
Over the years, Vito has performed throughout the United States and around the world, appearing at venues and events including the Montreal Jazz Festival, the State Hall in Vienna, and the Shanghai Concert Hall in China. He has worked with internationally known artists such as Luciano Pavarotti, Giada Valenti, Natasha Marsh, Ferhat Göçer, and the Lettermen, and has served as music director for artists including Patrizio Buone, Giorgia Famonti, Marco Fiorante, and the Sicilian Tenors.
Open up your hearts and find amore from songs we sing to you. Hearts we sing to you. Devi mocha così anime
Vito's work has also reached film, television, and recording projects, with his music appearing in The Sopranos and Eat, Pray, Love, and his playing being featured on recordings with artists such as Nancy Wilson and Engelbert Humperdinck. In addition to all of that, he has produced more than 30 albums and continues to create new work, including his own podcast called Memories of a Musician. And I suggest you check that out, and I was fortunate enough to be a guest on there with Vito. Before we go to the interview, I'd like to let you hear and see some of Vito's wonderful work.
Listen, lady, I am only 7, but I can tell you're a complete moron because I am from Naples.
She said that.
What am I, invisible? Hey, Angela. How's it going today?
Great, Lucia. Your order's almost ready if you want to go ahead and take a seat.
Oh, I think I'm going to use the ladies' room if that's okay.
Of course, it's all you. I'll give you a call when your order's ready.
Awesome. Keep the change. Oh, by the way, my mother said to say hi.
Oh, she's so sweet.
Yeah, to you. Hey. Excuse me, ladies. Sorry, pardon me. I'm sorry. Hey.
One of our favorite films.
So I said, like, I've been telling people all about this thing because it's one of these things, like, you gotta see it. If you love the movie, you gotta see this thing. It's really, really good. And the music is phenomenal. You know? And you say, how do you ever do this? They even do this film into music. It really was something to see. I gotta tell you, it's phenomenal, Rocco. The music, the same guy who was a star in the film is the star in the play.
Lucia.
Oh, hey, Rocco. It's nice to see you again. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Hi, I'm Lucia.
Nice to meet you.
This is my good buddy Gino.
Oh, nice.
Why don't
Nice
you
to
join
meet
us?
you. Oh, no, thanks. I have to get home to my mother.
Maybe next time?
Sure. I think my order's ready, so nice to meet you, Gino.
Nice to meet you.
Good to see you again, Rocco.
Good seeing you.
What's going on here?
Nothing. I ran into her a couple of months ago and I just keep running into her ever since. Get this. She loves Italian candy. I'll be right back. Lucia!
Well, I am really looking forward to this conversation, and I'm so honored to welcome Vito DiSalvo to Toneful Tuesdays. All right, friends, I am so happy to welcome my friend, the talented Vito DiSalvo.
Thank you, Tony. It's great to be on your program.
Oh, it's so great to have you.
You could tell your audience you were a guest on my podcast. I don't remember the exact date, but several months ago. And it was wonderful to be together at that time. And now we're together again on your podcast. It's awesome.
Yeah, actually, I did inform folks that you were coming on and that I had been on your show. Yeah. And we're going to send some more people over your way. You have a great show going on. It's wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's just like you. I mean, I'm stabbing at it, you know. I don't know, you know, there's no formula. There's nothing in a book written down. This is the way you do it, you know.
No. I'm flying by the seat of my pants, as they say.
I hear you.
Well, at any rate, it's so good to have you here. You're a talented man and a very kind and wonderful human. Thinking back to your childhood, who or what first inspired you to pursue music, and how did that path lead you through Duquesne University and eventually to earning your Master of Music degree from the University of Miami?
Well, the beginning, I have to tell you, is that I'm going to tell you what my parents told me because I was very young. And at 3 years old, on Saturday nights, we had a black and white television that was like a big piece of furniture. And on Saturday nights was the Lawrence Welk show. And Lawrence Welk played the accordion. His good friend and colleague, Myron Florin, played the accordion. And later on in the show, there was a gal who played ragtime piano. And she played the accordion too. So at the very beginning of that, we're talking in the mid-50s, there were 3 accordion players on that show. And sometimes they all played at the same time. But of course, I thought Myron Florin was the king of the accordion there on that show. And my parents told me that every time someone would play the accordion, I was like mesmerized. And I would just like watch and, And so they said, just for fun, we're going to buy you an accordion for Christmas, a little toy, They bought me a toy accordion. Well, then they said, when you started picking out melodies on the accordion, we figured we better get you lessons. So by 4 years old, an accordion teacher, Johnny Georges, came to the house. My older sister, Judy, is 4 years older than me, went to school with a girl who was taking accordion lessons, and the teacher came to the house. So my parents said, find out who it is. So he came to the house, and he walked in, saw Judy and me standing there. He said, when do you want to start her? I said, not her, him. Well, I was a little pipsqueak, 4 years old, and I was tiny. So he just laughed, and so he said, okay, So my father, he was a violinist, played the violin quite well, and studied with someone from the Pittsburgh Symphony and things like this when he was young. But unfortunately, he was drafted to World War II. He got shot up on Omaha Beach the first day our troops landed in Normandy. And one of the places he got shot up was his left hand, and they had to relocate his thumb, lower it. And when he came back, he couldn't hold the fiddle. So he never played again. But he knew music. And he would sit down with me every night when I started lessons and make sure that I played every note correctly, properly. And he was relentless. There were times I just wanted to go out on the street and play baseball with my friends on the street. And you're going downstairs and practice. So, now I didn't realize it at the time, but I guess he saw a little bit of talent in me and thought, we gotta make him work and make this happen. So I didn't appreciate it till much later, but I did appreciate it. And so then I had a neighbor who was a custodian at the school, middle school. And when I was in 5th grade, she must have told the band director, this little kid down the street plays the accordion, whatever. Well, they didn't have accordions in the band. So next thing I know, the band director's pulling me out of class. He says, I understand you're a musician. I says, yeah, I play the accordion. He said, do you want to be in the band? I said, sure. He said, what would you like to play? I said, I don't care, whatever you need. He said, do you read treble clef and bass clef? I said, I read both. He said, how about the baritone horn? I said, I don't know what it is, but I'll play it. So I started on baritone horn in 5th grade. And in 10th grade, I started studying with Matty Shiner, who was the teacher at Duquesne University. And, by 8th grade, I knew I wanted to be a music major. And by 9th grade, because of these teachers that I had in school, they were all Duquesne University School of Music people. And I thought, well, why wouldn't I go there? I mean, that's where I'm going to go to school. So by 9th grade, I figured I wanted to go to Duquesne. And so then I just set my sights on it. I started studying with Matty Shiner, who was the head of the brass department at Duquesne, and boom, went to Duquesne. Well, while I was at Duquesne, I got really, and I was always interested. I wrote stage band charts when I was in high school and I started the stage band to play for basketball games. And I would write the charts, and there were teachers there, that Chaz Bosley, who was a great trumpet player, jazz player, and he wrote charts and things, and he helped me with the voicings and how to score the saxophone section and things like that. So I learned a lot. And so then when I go to college and I'm sitting in this really great symphonic band, and I'm like, I can write something like for this. So I started my junior year, I wrote a piece called Concerto for Band, 3-movement piece. And it was premiered at Mideast Music Conference there in Pittsburgh at the William Penn Hotel at the time. Mm-hmm. And so from there, the next year, that night, after it was premiered, the artist in residence of the woodwind department His name was Nestor Koval. He came right after the concert. He said, Vito, he said, that was a great piece. He said, I was asked to play soprano saxophone with the band next year. Would you consider writing something? There's not much written for soprano saxophone and band, symphonic band. He said, would you consider writing something? I said, sure. So the next year I wrote Rhapsody for soprano saxophone and band. And then we premiered it at Mideast the next year with Nestor Koval, the soloist. So then my natural thing was, look, I love this. I love writing. I love orchestrating. I'm going to go to school for this. So I seeked out one of the best band composers at that time was Clifton Williams, and he wrote for all, Marine Band and the Navy Band and the Army Band, whatever. He wrote all, and some great music. So he was at the University of Miami. So I went on my the summer between my junior and senior year, I got on a plane by myself, flew to Miami, rented a car, drove to the campus, carrying my scores and some cassette tapes of these pieces. And he happened to be there in the middle of the summer. He was in his office. I knocked on the door. He opened the door. It was a big guy from Texas. And he said, come on in, And so he listened to my piece, and we had a great time together. And basically, that's it. That's why I went to the University of Miami, and I studied with him. Unfortunately, he got ill near the end of my work there, and I started studying with Alfred Reed, who was he was the editor-in-chief of Howard Hanson Publications, which was in New York City, but it moved to Miami Beach. And after he was there for a while, he retired, and then he went over to the University of Miami and started a program called Music Merchandising, which was basically the business of music. Well, I didn't know anything about, I didn't know music was a business, right? I just thought you either taught music or you played music. And I went all the way through Duquesne University with that mentality. So now I come out and I go to Alfred Reed said to me, look, you're a composer, you should take some of my classes. So I took a couple of his classes, and you learn about copyright law, you learn about publishing and publishing contracts and recording contracts and record companies and artist management and all these things. And so it was a whole new world for me. It opened up a whole new world. And that's why in 1977 I came back to Pittsburgh and started Mifflin Hills Music Company, which was a publisher. So that's how everything transcended from 3 years old with a toy accordion.
What a great story that is.
Thank you.
With Mifflin Hills, you're publishing, do you publish other works besides yourself, or is it just your music?
I do. Originally, I just published my own music, choral music. I did some choral music, had a whole Christmas swing series. I had some band pieces and different things. And then as time went on and I would meet different musicians who had music and they were looking to do something, then I'd say, look, I'll publish your music and we'll try to get something going with it. So I have probably, 6, 7, at one point, maybe even more. I might have had 10 or 12 writers that were signed to Mifflin Hills.
That's great. That's great. I have my own. Now I haven't done anybody's but mine. Mine's Stan and Ollie songs because I had 2 cats and they reminded me of Laurel and Hardy.
There you go.
So I named them Stan and Ollie, and my publishing company is called Stan and Ollie Songs.
I never thought of that, but when I was a kid, I had 2 goldfish, Muffy and Tuffy. And one day I washed out there was in a little, one of those little goldfish bowls. And one day I just emptied it. I put them in a little thing in water. I washed it with soap and water. And I must not got all the soap out. And the next day they were floating on her back, So I buried them out back, but
not good.
Muffy and Tuffy,
So, Vito, your career has taken you in many different directions: performing, teaching, arranging, composing, conducting, and producing. How have those different parts of your musical life influenced one another over the years?
Well, I started playing professionally at age 14. That's when I put my band We Three together. And of course, I didn't even drive yet, so my father used to drive me to all the gigs, and the other guys were the same age as me too. And so we all had to have our fathers help us getting to the gigs and things like that. And that's when the playing started, and we were playing dance music. We were designed to do dance music for events, parties, weddings, whatever. And in fact, I could tell you, it's a kind of a cool story. The drummer, a kid named Gary Cannon, his father, Ed Cannon, was also a drummer, but he had a day gig. And his day gig was he was the service manager for Cochran Pontiac, which was at the time was located in Braddock, PA. And he said to us, this is in like October of 1965. And he said, would you guys, he came to one of our rehearsals and he heard us. He says, you guys are doing a good job. He said, would you guys like to play for the opening of the 1966 Pontiacs? They always had that, like the new cars in November, of the previous year. So, I was absolutely, I was excited, I'm going to see the 66 GTO. We'll be in the showroom and all this, that'd be fabulous, So this is the first performance of We Three. We go out to the thing. We're not in the showroom. Find out that we're playing in the garage, in the mechanic's garage. But they had a lot of new cars there, and people were coming through there as well, So a guy came up to me and he said, boy, you guys are great. He said, do you play at weddings? I said, oh, sure we do. And I handed him a business card, just like that. He booked us for his daughter's wedding, and that was the beginning. From there, it just enveloped I. And so that's how got started that way as far as playing. And then teaching, when I turned 16 and started driving. Now remember, I said my teacher, my accordion teacher, came to the house and taught me. The lessons were $2, and he came to the house to teach me. And so the natural thing for me was, if there was a kid that wanted to learn to play something and I could help him out, I would go to his house and teach. So that's what I did. And the first kid that I taught was maybe in 7th grade or 8th grade. And he was playing the baritone horn, which was my major instrument in college. Eventually would have been, I was still in high school. So there I started teaching privately at age 16 and going to people's homes. And basically I was teaching brass instruments, and I was teaching accordion, and I was teaching a little bit of piano, but I wasn't really a pianist at that point until after college. The other thing to mention about your question is that I was really, when I sat in band and we were playing a piece, I was enthralled about how music was constructed, the architecture of music. And I would sit there and listen. What are the flutes playing? And while they're playing this part, the trumpets are playing this part. And how does that work together, And so I started to look at music in a different light, like the architecture of it, rather than just listening to the end product. Right. So that's what got me interested in composition and arranging and all the orchestration and all those things. And then, of course, recording. The first recording, and I had done recordings before, like I think as early as 1982. I did for producers, and go in the studio and record maybe just strings. I'd arrange strings for a medley of songs or songs on an album, and I'd go in and just do the strings, and then somebody else was doing all the rhythm stuff and whatever. But my own recording with We Three the first one was 1987. It was called Bravo Italia. And, you talk about producing, and, we didn't have a producer. So, I kind of evolved. And you don't really know. I used to have students, Mr. D, I want to be a producer when I grow up. Well, where do you go to school to be a producer? You better be a musician first. And then you start recording and you start doing all these things. And then you understand how a producer sits in the booth and gives direction, and how they put things together, and how they're responsible for the whole flow of an album and different things. I mean, there's a lot to it. And so I just kind of learned that like grassroots,
Sure. I think that's how many of us learn it. Most of the producers I know are really good musicians. Now, however, there is a guy named Rick Rubin, who's a famous producer that doesn't play anything. He plays nothing, but he knows what sounds good, and he knows what stuff sounds good together. I think it's because he's listened to a lot of music, so he may not play an instrument, but he's a very good producer. I think that the general public listens to things as a whole, right? Maybe Lana is more of a musician, and listens to things in parts.
No, actually, we would be driving somewhere in the car and have the radio on, and she'd say, Vito, do you hear those lyrics? And I said, no, I don't. I don't hear any of them. I said, I hear what the bass player's doing, and I hear what the guitar player's doing. I said, but I don't listen to a song that way.
I know.
But she's a typical audience. She knows the lyrics to all the songs, and she can sing and sings harmony. She's good ears and things like that. But when I met her, she played the piano, was taking piano lessons, and she didn't. I mean, she did fine, but I would get down there and sit down at the piano and be able to play hours worth of music. It just blew her away. She just said, that's it, I'm quitting. And she quit. She got frustrated and quit.
I get that. My wife said, show me a couple things. I hear you telling your students about hammer-ons and pull-offs. I tried to show her one day, and she was like, ow, that really hurts. That really hurts. I don't even know how you can do that. So it didn't last long. It's my housewife theory, because my wife knows every lyric to practically every song that comes on the radio, and I know none of them unless I had to learn them for a gig. I'm not that guy, much like you. And I think it's because we listen to music, we analyze and we pick out parts, and we concentrate on a section, a horn section, or, a string section, or rhythm section stuff. We do that. And I think sometimes it ruins the listening experience.
Yeah, in some ways it does. The overall, yeah.
But you can't produce music without being able to do that.
Yeah, that's right.
And I've heard your stuff, and it's wonderful. It's really wonderful. So you have great ears.
Thank you. Well, God gave me good ears, that's for sure. I can't take the credit for that.
So, Vito, you've played as an accordionist and a pianist for over 55 years. Who would you say some of your influences are on both of those instruments?
Well, the accordion, obviously, as I said, even once I started playing, I still listened to Lawrence Welk for a long time because of Myron Florin was a really great player. Right. And then as time went on, Lawrence Welk did not play as much. Very rarely. He was conducting and smiling at the audience. And Joanne Castle was the gal, that was her name, that played the piano, ragtime piano, but she also played the accordion. But that was one with the accordion. Then, of course, my accordion teacher, Johnny Georges, was from Boston. It was Greek, and he played very, very well. And when I was young, and I'm talking 10 years old, 11 years old, I played an accordion band, and we had a teacher band, and I sat right next to Joe Zarnich. Joe Zarnich was accordion teacher. He had a studio in Southside on Carson Street, and he was terrific. And I sat right next to him. He was the first chair, and I was right next to him, as and we used to play all this classical music on the accordion, like overtures and different things. Some written for accordion, just specifically for accordion. Some were the overtures from, operas and different things. So I played all this music when I was young. And, I would say that, there was another guy, and I have to tell you this quick story. His name is Dick Contino. Dick Contino was a great accordion player. He had a lot of albums out. And when I was probably 12 or 13 years old, my parents bought me an album. And my dad, one of his favorite songs was Twilight Time. And I used to play it on the accordion, Well, he bought me this album. And of course, Twilight Time was done by a group called the Three Sons. But Twilight Time, Dick Contino had it on his album. And the album cover, he's standing there with the accordion like bellows wide open. And behind him, 3 or 4 beautiful ladies, right, as a prop. And a thing that Twilight Time. So how many years later? In probably about 2000, early 2000s, maybe 2003 or 4, my group, We Three, was performing at the Milwaukee Italian Festival. We did this for several years in a row. And eventually I did it with the Sicilian tenors as well. But when we went there as We Three, and this is at the Summerfest grounds, it's right on Lake Michigan in Milwaukee. And it's a huge, like 100 acres, whatever it is. They have like 8 stages. There are no amusements like an amusement park would have, rides and different things. Nothing. It was all different stages. And every stage went from noon till midnight. All of these 8 stages had entertainment all the way through. So if you were on, like we would be on, let's say, the Briggs & Stratton stage, that's where Briggs & Stratton motors were made in Milwaukee. So we would be on the Briggs & Stratton stage or the Miller Lite stage or whatever. And you'd be there for 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 7:00 p.m. was your show for 1 hour, and it was the same every night. So this one year, I'm on the stage, and my show was right after Dick Contino. And Dick Contino is out there playing. And I mean, he was a wonderful player. And he was 80 years old at the time. And I mean, he was in good shape. He used to work out with weights and all this stuff to stay in shape to play the accordion, And so when he was done, I opened the stage door for him to come through. And I put my hand on Mr. Contino. I said, that was great. I said, I enjoyed the show. I said, my first album I ever had, and I just went like this, Twilight Time. He goes, I made that album 61 years ago. Just like that.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like in shock.
Wow.
And so he was great. I got a nice picture on my wall of shame. I have a nice picture with Dick Contino and myself. Anyhow, he was a big influence because I had a lot of albums that he did. I don't know if you know this, but accordion players, one of the big songs was called Lady of Spain.
Oh, yeah.
Every accordion player had to play it. It was like, but he had like this elaborate arrangement that was difficult to play, And so anyhow, he was one. Now on piano, it's interesting. Peter Nero, of course, my biggest influence with piano was Dave Brubeck.
There you go.
And when I was in late high school and in early college, I learned all the Brubeck stuff just by listening to it. I didn't have any music, and I just listened to it, and I said, this is amazing because this is not in 4/4 time. Every song was at a different time signature. And it was just, again, it's that architecture, something that you look at it and say, this is very different. I got to figure this out, and like Blue Rondo a la Turk.
Great song.
I played that whole thing, and I learned the whole thing just by listening to the recording. Real quick story about Dave Brubeck. I was performing with one of the artists, international artists, Patrizio Buone. We were in Napa, the Napa Opera House. We were doing a concert there one night. And in the afternoon, of course, I was the music director, so I'm there early and I'm getting everything, with working with tech people, make sure everything's set. And one of the tech guys comes over. He says, I don't know if you noticed, there was a Steinway Grand that I was getting ready to play there. He said, but Dave Brubeck signed this piano. Look inside, right inside the piano, Dave Brubeck signed it.
Awesome.
During the show, Patrizio used to go around to all the musicians. And you know some of the musicians that were with me, like Eric DeFade, for instance, you know, a lot of the guys. So Tony DePaulis was playing bass. You know, we had a lot of different guys. We're all from Pittsburgh. And so he'd go around to each guy and say, who influenced you? Play a couple, you know, couple measures of music from the guy that influenced you. So everybody go around. It came to me at the end. I said, well, you know, I had a lot of influences. I said, but Dave Brubeck was one of the biggest, and I have to play Dave Brubeck tonight because he signed this piano.
Great.
And I played a little bit of Blue Rondo à la Turk that night. So
that is great. That's great. Your band, I heard nothing but great stuff. And I heard you guys, but I never got to really meet you until you came to my New Year's Eve show that one year. But I always thought how your musical quality was really high. I played at the Wheeling Italian Festival a couple years, and I don't know if you know this guy or not, Moreno Fruzzetti.
Oh yeah, I know Moreno very well.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. He and his wife, Jean. I was playing on the main stage before him, and he actually came out of his hotel because he said he liked what he heard so much. He thought it might have been a record playing, is what he told me. So we got to be friends at that Italian festival. I wondered if you knew him or not.
Oh, yeah. We did many festivals together.
Great.
Yeah. He's actually from the same area. He's from Tuscany, which is where my wife and her family's from.
Are you? You know, my name is spelled, really, it's spelled Cianflone. That was the Italian spelling.
Okay.
But my great-grandfather came over on the boat. They misspelled it with a J. And we're from Calabria. Catanzaro is the area.
Yeah, it's Calabria's in the south of Italy.
Yeah.
And you know, Tuscany is northern, but more like almost central, but a little bit northern. And that's Moreno. That's where he came from. Yeah.
Great. And my wife is Sicilian.
What's that? Oh, your wife?
My wife is Sicilian.
Watch the knives.
I got to watch myself. Trust me. I sleep with one eye open. So the accordion is such a distinctive instrument, and I just love the sound of it. In fact, I got to figure out how to, I don't know. I know you've had some physical issues, but do you still ever pull your accordion out?
I do. And
okay.
I'm doing more and more, yeah.
I'm going to have to get you to record something for me.
Okay, I will.
I would love that because I love the sound of an accordion. Now, what do you think people misunderstand about an accordion?
Well, in this country, and particularly where we grew up in our part of the country, everybody related accordion to being a polka instrument, that the only thing it did was play polkas. Now, not that there's anything wrong with polkas. I played a few in my life, and they're a lot of fun. But the accordion is so much more than that. And if you go to Italy and you go to a music conservatory, you'll hear the accordion player in a practice room right next to the violinist, right next to the clarinetist. It's a very important instrument, even though technically it's a folk instrument. And when you saw the little concertina, the little button box, it worked like a harmonica. You pull it one way, you get one pitch, and you push it, you get another pitch, sort of like the harmonica. And, you know, it was meant to do simple songs with, you know, 2 chords, 3 chords, and sing and you know, bring people together and things like that. But then the piano accordion came along, and it got more complicated, and people started writing. One of the big composers was a guy named Pietro Diero, and then he had a son, Pietro Diero Jr. They wrote tons of classical music for accordion. I basically played heavy classical music till I was 15 or 16 on the accordion. Yeah. At the same time, I did play popular music, but I very rarely played polkas because I knew that stereotype, and it bothered me because I knew that the accordion was so much more. And it's such a beautiful, great instrument to have in your hands that you have the right hand, you have these, like a piano keyboard, but over here with the basses, with the single note bass notes, and then you've got a row of major chords, a row of minor chords, a row of dominant seventh chords, and a row of diminished seventh chords. And you basically have an orchestra in your hands.
Yes.
And so it's an amazing instrument, and you have different reed blocks inside, and which create different tones. And you hit, you get a clarinet sound or a bassoon sound or a piccolo or a flute, and the full accordion uses all of those reed blocks together. Mm-hmm. And the accordion sound, which is a big sound, it's just a beautiful, beautiful instrument. I just absolutely passionate about that instrument. And I did a lot of recording with it. Played a lot of. The thing that you're pointing at was it always had this stereotype. It was a polka instrument, right? That's what it is.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question, because I'm aware of the other functions of the accordion, and I love that instrument. I mean, I really love the sound of it. And I've heard a bunch of other music that was played away from the polkas. And again, I'm not trashing polkas either, but I mean, it's really something, and you're a great player. So I love hearing people who can really play the accordion. It's something. In fact, I'm a big Hammond B3 player. Okay. So when you talk about the tone blocks and everything, I look at that as like the drawbars and stuff on a Hammond organ. They have all those drawbars that they can get all the different tones and sounds out of. So
same
cool.
Yeah.
You actually played on recordings for Nancy Wilson and Engelbert Humperdinck. Tell me about those.
Well, the Nancy Wilson, she was doing an album called Turned to Blue. And one of my professors at Duquesne University, Dr. John Wilson, was doing the arrangements for the album. And there was one song, and he called me and he said, Vito, he said, I would love to have a little bit of accordion on this song. The song was I'll Be Seeing You. It's an old, I played for a guy in Miami back in the day in the 70s, Norman Wayne. He went by Norman Wayne. And he was a terrific saxophone, clarinet, singer, or whatever. And it was his band. And that was his closing song every night. I'll be seeing you. It was a great song. Anyhow, so I said, sure, Dr. Wilson, I'll be happy to do that. So I went to the recording studio. I think they did this at the Manchester's Craftsmen's Guild. Yeah. And he had the places where he wanted me to play and basically what, he wanted me to play. So I did that, I did that. And that album won Nancy Wilson a Grammy. The story of the Engelbert Humperdinck is kind of funny too, because they hired, and I think this was T.J. Levinsky, who did all the doo-wop shows. He was the main producer for the doo-wop shows. And he got the call that Engelbert was going to do a show in Hawaii, and Engelbert wanted him to bring all the musicians that played on the doo-wop orchestra to take them to Hawaii to play. So they went. And it was a videotape. They videotaped the concert there in Hawaii. And when they got back, I get a call from, I think it was Ralph Guzzi called me, who was, I think, the conductor for that group and did a lot of the arrangements and things. And Ralph called me and he said, hey, Vito, he said, we did this. He explained to me, we did this show with Engelbert in Hawaii. And he said, but there was one song, there was accordion on it, but we used a keyboard accordion. He said, I'd like you to go in the studio and record the actual accordion, have you play accordion on it. I said, okay. I said, no problem with that. So he told me to go to this recording studio I think it was in Swissville. And it was a former student of mine, Sean McDonald. You know Sean?
I do.
Yeah, he was a student of mine. And
Great.
he's going to be on a program sometime in the future. I forget when, but a really cool guy. And he's done some things over the years with me.
He and his brother.
And his brother, Kevin.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I had both of them too.
Great.
And so Sean, I go to the studio and he said, here's what we're going to do. And you play these parts and whatever. So I played it, we recorded it, boom, done, left. Get another call from Ralph and he says, would you be willing to come in to the TJ's as a TV studio in his home? He said, like to get you playing the accordion. I said, that's fine, I don't care. So I went in one night and took the accordion and then played the same parts that I played on there. And if you watch the video of the show, on that particular song, you'll see me for maybe a second, maybe 2 seconds. You'll see my hands on the keys and you'll see me for like a split second. And that's it. But I played the accordion on that part too,
That's great. Well, they picked the right guy to do those sessions.
Yeah.
That's right. So, Vito, you've worked across classical, opera, jazz, Italian pop, and American dance music. How have you been able to move so comfortably between such different styles?
I did all of these styles when I was young, very young. First on the accordion and eventually on piano too. And I just felt, I loved classical music. I loved pop. I did some jazz. I played about the only thing I didn't play was country or hillbilly music or bluegrass or anything like that. I didn't do. But other than that, I did folk music, but other than that, I played all this stuff and the Italian music, and I played Greek music when I was young because my accordion teacher was Greek, so he taught me the whole Greek repertoire too. And so I played all this stuff when I was young, and I loved it all. I just love music, it doesn't matter if it's this style or that style. Look, I worked the last 7 years with the Sicilian tenors, and we did some opera arias, and we did some maybe Broadway stuff and a couple pop things, whatever. It's all great. If it's done well, it's good. It's good with me, as long as it's done well. And so I really grew up playing dance music because my dad and mother were really good dancers, and they danced to the big bands back when they had big bands at Kennywood Park and Westview Park and the Vogue Terrace and all those places. And so my dad said, if you want to make money in this business, this is the music you have to play, because these are the people who are out dancing and spending money, Because I grew up in the rock and roll area, and I want to play rock and roll. He said, no. He said, you want to play Glenn Miller and Tommy Dorsey, I said, okay, if you say so. I wasn't going to argue with him. So I played, and that's what we did. And we started in '65. We were playing a lot of big band music. Like when I say Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, Jimmy Dorsey, all these different big bands. And we played that. And we played, a variety of things, a couple polkas, a little tarantella here and there, whatever. But dance music, the idea was you go to play a party and you want people on the dance floor all night. You want that dance floor packed, no matter what. And that's what we did. And I did that for 49 years. But we three was together for 49 years.
It's amazing. I have some younger musicians that listen to these podcasts, and I love hearing you say what you said, because sometimes musicians can become closed-minded, and they have the stuff that they pick that they love, and that's it. Everything else stinks, And I'm much like you. If it's done well, then I'm there. And I think that you need to keep an open mind as a young musician to grasp all those styles. All those influences become part of you. So not only can you play with other musicians and play various music, but once you become a writer, you have all those influences as well, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All of that is in your mind somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it all filters through eventually in your work. Yeah.
It does. And I'm sure that you, as a writer, you've probably written things and then you realize, like, wow, this kind of came from something that was an early influence, like when I was a kid, that's kind of seeped out, right? Later on.
Sure.
Yeah, it's great. I'm constantly fascinated by music. I'll go to my grave being fascinated by it. And I love talking to people like you.
No, you and me both. It's an amazing art form, you know.
It is. So you mentioned We Three, and I told you that I had heard about you guys forever, and I actually heard you, and you were wonderful, and you guys were always busy, and I know why, because you were great, and you also had the business side of things together, and I know that was much of your doing, but I also know that it was much of Lana, your wife's doing. Am I correct?
Yes, for sure, especially in the later years. I mean, when Lana actually went to school, she has 2 degrees, special education and elementary education. And she taught when I was in grad school. She taught in Miami, and she taught a little bit up north too. But then when she got pregnant with our first child, our son Vito, I just said, hey, you know, back then, so Vito's 48 years old. So 48 years ago, I just said, Lana, I just stay home, raise our family. I'll go play a few extra gigs and don't worry about it, you know. So that's the way life was. And that's what the expectation was. And so she would be home. And then in the evening, I'd come home and I'd pick up the phone and I'd talk to maybe a bride or talk to someone who was having a party. And I would ask a lot of different questions. And Lana would listen. And then when the phone would ring, if I wasn't there, she would ask some of these questions. And little by little, I would say she evolved into handling that aspect of it for me. She would ask all these questions. Then when we started using contracts, then she would do all the contracts. She did all the communication with all the people. And basically all I had to do was come home and say, where am I playing tonight? What do I have to wear? Where do I have to go? What do they want to hear? You know, that's it. And then I go do the job. And I go and do my part. But she would do all of that legwork of what's the time, where's it at, when, you know, are you having any special dances, what are the special songs you want, et cetera, give me the name of the bridal party so we can announce it, et cetera. I mean, she took care of all the logistics, and all I did was show up and play, basically. You know?
Yeah. So she was kind of like George Martin with the Beatles.
Yeah.
My wife, it was funny because my wife was physically at a lot of shows. And I know when she wasn't there, sometimes I think it was less important for me to be at this show than my wife, because people would say, well, where's Kay? Where's Kay? Why isn't she here? People loved her. So, you know, I'm very thankful that I have a wife like that. And you do as well. I know how helpful Atlanta has been to you, and you guys have a great relationship, and I love seeing that too, you know.
And we work on the albums together and things. But to your point about Kay being at your gigs, see, I didn't play public gigs.
Yes.
I played all private parties. And so Lana never came. She was never, ever at any of the gigs until 1995, we three celebrating our 30th anniversary. And I said, let's have a dinner dance. Let's put it on ourselves. And let's just invite, you know, send it out, flyer out, and people come. So we did. And we had 450 people show up.
Oh, great.
At the library fire hall. And it was, after it was over, all these people, Vito, when's the next one? I said, there is no next one. I said, this was just a one-shot deal here. And so what happened is people just absolutely loved it. So what we did was from that point, 95 until I'd say 2010, which was about a 15-year period, we would do 4 or 5 dinner dances a year that we would put on ourselves. So we'd rent the hall. We'd hire Lana did all this. She would rent the hall, hire the caterer, set the hall up, send the flyers out to, we had an email list that was, well, at that time wasn't email, it was mailing list.
Oh, yeah.
Send out flyers on the mailing list. She'd take the reservations, et cetera, et cetera. She'd run the whole thing. And all we did, again, is show up and play. It was a dinner dance. So we would have a nice catered dinner, and then band would play maybe 8:30 to 12:30. At 8:30, we'd go on stage. It was such a memorable moment every time we did this dinner dance because we never had less than 300 people, and it was between 3 and typically 350. And we would start the first song, and as soon as the dawn beat, you just see this wave of people get up and come onto the dance floor, and the dance floor was filled from the first dance to the last song we played at 12:30. It was just amazing. And in a way, it was amazing for us. It was a way to allow people that wanted to dance to our band to come in, because there was no public place other than some of the festivals that we played. There was no public place where people could come and dance to our band. So unless they happened to be invited to a wedding, and whatever. So this was an opportunity. So they would come and dance, and it was just, it became like a promotional tool for us too, because these people that were dancing, their sons and daughters are getting married. And they said, you got to come in here. This is the band you want to have for the wedding. You come to the next dance and you tell me if you like this band. And that they would bring their sons and daughters and whatever. And that's how it perpetuated more and more work for us because, it was a way of kind of promoting the band in a sense. Not without really, that wasn't the intent,
Mm-hmm. Well, when you're great like you guys were, you promote yourself every time you do a show. They hear you and they say, hey, they're great. And there you go. So your good work speaks for itself.
And Lana always said it was the easiest band in the world to book because, it had such a reputation. A couple would get engaged and a mother would call us, and Lana will, of course, take the call, and she'd say, our daughter just got engaged, and we would like we three to play for the wedding. But before we book a date, what dates do you have next July and August that are available so we could talk to the priest and get a date for church and find a hall? They would literally call us to see what date we had before they'd make any other arrangements.
Yes. Well, that's a testament to how wonderful you guys were. So that's how important you were. They would book their wedding around you.
Oh, so, I can't tell you how many people did that. And, we were lucky. I mean, we just had a good thing going. We loved it. We loved doing what we did. That was the primary thing, man. Everybody in the band just loved what we did, enjoyed it. And it was a lot of fun.
And for you younger musicians out there, this is proof that your work ethic means everything. You have to do good work. You have to do the best work you could possibly do every single time that you go out. Am I right, Vito?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I talked about this on one of my podcasts not too long ago. And it's just like the idea is that we played for crowds of 5,000 people. It's like the Milwaukee Festival, for example. And, we also played a rehearsal dinner for 26 people. Yes. It didn't matter whether you were playing for 5,000 people or 26 people. You played exactly the same, both of those gigs. You played no different. You put everything into it that you have for 26 people. I don't care if it's 10 people or 10,000 people. You perform the same way. Otherwise, forget it. Go get another job. Go be a cash register at Walmart or something.
I agree. I always felt like I'm not playing live shows now because of my physical condition, but I'm able to play, thankfully. But when I did perform, I always felt like it is such a privilege for me to get to do this. And I felt like God allowed me to do this with my life, that the last thing I wanted to do was go out there and coast. It's so important for any of you younger musicians out there, really, really take every show that you do, every little thing you do, even if you think it's not important, it's all important. Everything you do, man, it's all important.
And any chance you get to play music, and particularly even with other musicians, every note is a gem. Every note you play, not every song, every note of every song is just important, and to play it just right.
It is.
Ferhat Göçer.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
There were some tough names. So far, out of all the interviews, you've had the hardest names, all these Italian names for me. And I was like, I hope I got them right.
I know when I do opera singers and I start to get all those operas and all these different, I go through it too.
So Vito, you have been involved in the music business for many years, and you understand the publishing end and all that kind of stuff. How important is it for musicians to really be up on that sort of stuff?
Well, I think it's important, and they should know some basics about the business of music. Unfortunately, the business of music is like really one of those areas that's not really, I want to say, visible to the public a lot. And, I went to Duquesne University School of Music, and I played music all through high school, whatever, as a child, and then college. And even when I graduated from Duquesne, and I think I mentioned this earlier, is that I just thought music was either you taught music or you performed music. That was it. I didn't understand that music was a business and how music made money for composers, for publishing companies, what publishing companies did. You could run a publishing company from a file cabinet. It's just owning copyrights. That's all it is. It's owning the copyrights. And, it's just like, amazing that the things that you find out when you start to study a little bit about the business side of music. And I think it's important to know some basics about copyright law. And of course, the copyright law is different now than it was earlier. When I first started copywriting things, the copyright was good for 28 years and a 28-year renewal. In 1978, we got the new copyright law. And then it was good for 70 years after the death of the writer, or the death, if there were more than one writer, the death of the last surviving writer. And now is 90 years after the death of the last surviving writer. So it's like an insurance policy. If you're collecting royalties, your family, your heirs are going to get those royalties for 90 years after your death. That's important to know, especially people that want to write music and to want to, publish music and things. I was fortunate that I went to the University of Miami, even though I went to study, I was a music theory and composition major, because my professor, my composer that I wanted to study with, Clifton Williams, fell ill, and I had to study with Alfred Reed. But Alfred Reed was a terrific composer, but he was also the head of the music merchandising department, and he encouraged me to take some of these courses for the exact reason that you just said. Because I was a composer, I should understand a little bit of the basics, right? Well, I got into it so much, and it was opened such a world that I came back from Miami in 1970, late in 76, and in 77, I started Mifflin Hills Music Company as a publishing company. So that's how it all evolved, And so the answer to the question is absolutely. I think schools now, maybe colleges. I know Duquesne, I think they have some exposure to some of this where they didn't have, because I even went down to Duquesne myself and spoke to a couple classes down there, but they were the music technology kids. But I don't know if they do it for like all the students in the whole music school, but it's important to understand a little bit about how every time somebody walks into an elevator and hears music, people were making money.
Somebody's getting paid. Yeah.
Writers of that music and the publisher of that music are making money.
Right.
Songs played on the radio. The writers of the music and the publishers are making money. So, yeah, it's important to know.
Vito, you have composed many Italian-styled dance songs, tangos, waltzes, mazurkas, tarantellas, and more. What is it about that style of music that continues to inspire you?
Well, first of all, it's part of my heritage, right? I mean, I grew up hearing a lot of this music. When I started doing albums with We Three, the first one was 1987, I decided to do about, I said, I should write 3 or 4 original songs because people we were playing for were dancers, and they loved to dance to these waltzes and tangos and even the tarantellas or whatever. They loved to dance this music. So it was like kind of a natural thing for me to go ahead and compose. Every album I did with We Three, I would always put 3 or 4 originals on it. And so consequently, I have a lot of, I've written a lot of tangos, a lot of waltzes, mazurkas, some polkas, some tarantellas, some other things too, a couple of up-tempo kind of samba type pieces, and some, I wrote a piece for piano called Mediterranea. And then, so it's all part of what I was doing at the time to support what we were doing. Not that I couldn't go and get other Italian waltzes or tangos. There were plenty available. But I just felt like, hey, I love to write music. Let me write I'm going to write a few new things for each album. So that's what I did. That's how that all played out,
That's great. Now, am I correct in saying that you've had 30-something albums?
Well, I produced about 30 albums in my studio when I lived in South Park. Now, some of those were for other artists.
Okay.
Like, do you know Jim Guerra, for instance?
Yeah.
He's a saxophone player, jazz saxophonist. And Jimmy, he did, I think, two albums in my studio, and different people that would do different albums. Plus, we had a series of albums by a group called the Celestial Light Orchestra. And we did hymns, religious hymns, in kind of like a newer fashion. I want to say New Age, but it bordered on New Age. Wow. And so we had album, it was called Volume 1 and Volume 2, called An Hour a Day. So each album was like an hour of this like kind of very soothing, kind of almost medicinal kind of music, like if I would give it to people that were ill and they would listen to this music. It was very healing for them. And then we did a Christmas album with the Celestial Light Orchestra. Well, who was the Celestial Light Orchestra? It was a bunch of MIDI equipment in my studio, right? It was just, it was all. Now, occasionally I brought in people from the Pittsburgh Symphony to play, oboe, cellist, flute players, different things on particular songs, but all the tracks under them were all designed from the keyboards and the MIDI instruments.
I haven't heard that. I have to hear this.
Okay.
That's great. The Celestial Light Orchestra.
Yeah. Light is spelled L-I-T-E.
Yeah.
Celestial Light Orchestra.
That is great. So let me ask you this then. How many compositions do you figure you've written in your lifetime? Do you have any idea?
Compositions, probably 50 to 60.
That's great. And you're a wonderful composer.
Thank you.
I know that you composed a symphony during COVID, a recorded symphony that you wrote.
Correct.
Tell me about that.
During COVID. So when when COVID hit, I was in Las Vegas with the Sicilian tenors, and we were supposed to do a 6-week run at the Tuscany, which is like a block off the strip. And anyhow, it all fell apart because of COVID. And of course, Vegas shut down and everything shut down. And so Lana and I came back to Florida. We were in Vegas and we came back to Naples, and we had a condo at that time. And then the decision came, should we stay in Naples or should we go back to Pittsburgh? And I said, well, I have my studio in Pittsburgh. I said, I'd like, we have a big back porch we could sit on. I think it's best to go back. So we went back, got on a plane again in March of 2020, which is the height of the COVID thing. And so we went back and got back and got settled. And I'd say in about mid-April or so, I said to Lana, I'm going to go down and write my symphony. And the reason I say this is in 2015 is when I originally set out to write my symphony, 2015. However, I was touring, I was teaching, I was, doing all kind of things going on. And I would write themes, and I wrote many themes, many motifs, and many different things. And as it turns out, only one theme from all that I wrote in 2015 became relevant, was used in this symphony, number 1. And that was the second theme of the first movement. And I used that theme and that whole idea that I had written back in 2015. Everything else, nothing used. So 2020 comes along, I go down to the studio, and here's the deal. When you're going to write a piece of music, you have to have the time to really focus and to dedicate without any interruptions, without anything else bothering you, and just it, because once the music starts to come, it pours out. And I said it was like being on a freight train with no brakes. That's the way I would describe it. And I started writing, and I was spending 12 to 15 hours every day for about 6 or 7 weeks. And how was I doing this? Well, I had manuscript paper beside me because I would work out a lot of things on paper. But I also had my computer and all my samples. I had 2 sampled libraries. One was the Vienna Symphony Library, and the other one was East West Audio, which is from the United States. And I had 2 libraries of orchestral sounds, and I would record every part from my keyboard. And so I did the whole recording from my keyboard with all orchestral sounds, samples. And it took me about, I'd say realistically, about 7 or 8 weeks to compose 38 minutes, 4 movements for full orchestra, including harp, a big percussion section, strings, brass, woodwinds, percussion. Okay. I never left the studio except to eat and to sleep. That was it. Nobody saw me. I mean, at that time, it was an unbelievable moment because for me, no one could come and visit us. We couldn't go visit anyone. I couldn't go play a gig. There were no gigs. There were nothing, And so it was the perfect time for me to take this time and write my symphony. And boy, I just went at it, and it was amazing how it just continued and continued and continued. It was pouring out like I couldn't get it down fast enough.
Now, I've heard it, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I look at things like that, and I think that is God working through you, for me. I don't know what you think, but I had a similar experience with my Tone Poems project. I wrote enough music for 2 CDs worth. I put one out. Every day I had new ideas that just came to me, and it was after a tough time for me. And I felt like it was just God speaking to me, helping me have these ideas,
Yeah. For sure. And here's what the way I look at it is when I go back to a piece of music that I'd written a while back, and then I play it and I listen to it and I say, where did that come from?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, and even when I wrote symphony and I did a few public things where people were there and I would explain the symphony and perform it, play it. And people would say, how did you do this? I don't understand. I said, that's a good question. I didn't do it. I said, there's a greater, there's a greater being, a God that intercedes when you're doing creative work, any kind of creative work. It has to be.
I feel like you or any wonderful musician, you train. You're like a boxer or anybody else that trains and has these mad skills, right? So you have to be the vessel to have that skill and that ability. But I do believe when you have those moments of it's a stream of consciousness and you're writing and writing and writing. And it's not like you can just turn that on, right? I mean, it's hard if at least it is for me. It's one of those things where it's hard for me to get something like that and just sit down and go, okay, I'm just turning that on now. And it seems to flow all of a sudden, right?
There's definitely a process, there's a process involved.
Yeah.
And the first part of the process is you have to have your mind clear of everything else. That's number one. And now you're just thinking about the music. And you play a little simple triad on the keyboard and you say, oh, okay, where do we go from here? It's like that's when it starts. And then you start to make, maybe play a particular melody, and say, does this sound familiar? Does this sound like something I wrote before or maybe I heard before? And then, you always struggle with that thing too, is you write something like this is 38 minutes and it's a lot of music.
Yeah.
Is there something that sounds like, well, I called the fourth movement my Tchaikovsky movement because it would reminded me of Tchaikovsky, but reminded me. I don't say there's anything that was exactly written like Tchaikovsky or anything like that, And then a third movement, I called it the Vito movement because it was a very Italian waltz, which was easy, for me to write, and it was, like a very natural thing. And so, I agree with you that, it's not just us. We are the vessel, like you said. That's a good word,
It's beautiful. So I urge people to check it out. You can hear it online, right? I found it on YouTube.
On my YouTube, there's a classical playlist of classical music, and I have some of my symphonic band things there, and there is the Symphony No. 1. And when you play it, the score is there. If you are interested, if you're interested in following the score as it's playing, you can do that.
Yeah. I'm going to put a clickable link so we can get them to that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. It's great stuff, Vito.
Thank you.
So, Vito, you've performed all over the world, including the Montreal Jazz Festival, Vienna, and Shanghai. Are there a few performances that especially stand out in your memory?
Well, you mentioned Shanghai, and that was a wonderful time for me. I was performing and conducting the Shanghai Symphony with Giorgia Fumanti, who I was her musical director at the time, and I had done all the arrangements, all the orchestrations for the orchestra, and went to China for about 11 or 12 days. We had several rehearsals with the orchestra, and then in the concert hall itself, a rehearsal, and then the concert. It was interesting because Georgia and I were hired by the Italian government because 2010 was the year, and 2010 was the World Expo was in Shanghai that year. So we were part of the Italian exhibition. They had their exhibition hall and they had, Ferrari there and other things. But we were part of Italy's exhibition and contribution to the World's Fair. And so we did this performance, and it was interesting on a lot of levels. First of all, it was the first time I was in China, and I had an interpreter with me, and I had like a translator. I had a person that just my driver would take me anywhere I wanted to go. 24/7 was available. And then I had another assistant person who was there for anything I needed. I mean, I was like, on my dressing room door, they had a sign on there, loge, meaning the lodge of chef de orchestra, meaning, the conductor of the orchestra. And they had my name. I was like, wow, that's the first, And of course, all the musicians in the orchestra, they were all Chinese, and they all called me maestro. And they thought I was from Italy. So a quick story, if I could tell you. You know how far Shanghai, China is from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's pretty far.
Yeah.
And so I go over there, and a guy comes up to me before the first rehearsal, comes up to me and he said, Maestro, he puts his hand out to shake my hand. He said, my name is Michael. I knew his name wasn't Michael because he was obviously Chinese. He said, my name is Michael. If there's anything you need or need to know, feel free to ask me. Perfect English, speaks to me. And I said, well, thank you, Michael. I said, I do have one question. I said, I know our rules with the unions in the United States as far as giving how long you can work the orchestra before you give them a break. And so I'd like to know that information, because I don't want to exceed their time before they should have a break. He said, okay, I'll check with the personnel director and I'll get back to you. I said, okay. So he got back to me like in 10 minutes. And he told me, you could work it for like an hour and a half. I said, okay, perfect. So the next day we have rehearsal again, and he comes up to me, he said, Maestro, he said, are you from Italy? I said, no. I said, now remember, we were part of the Italian exhibition. I said, no, I'm from the United States. I said, Georgia is from Italy. She was from Tuscany. I said, but I'm from the U.S. He said, we thought you were coming from Italy too. I said, no, I'm from the U.S. He said, where are you from the U.S.? I'm thinking, he's not going to know Pittsburgh. So I'm going to tell you, the state is called Pennsylvania. He said, Pennsylvania, where? Where in Pennsylvania? I said, Pittsburgh. He said, Pittsburgh. He said, I went to Duquesne University for my master's degree.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. I said, that's where I went for my bachelor degree.
Small world.
So he proceeded to tell me, he came over to the United States. He went somewhere in California for his bachelor. He went to Duquesne for his master's. He went somewhere in the South for a doctorate. Then he went back to China to play. So he got his entire education in the U.S., went back to China to play in the orchestra. So it was very, very interesting to learn. Here's a guy that went to the same school that I did in this orchestra. They were all Chinese, But they were so nice and so accommodating, and I mean, they treated me like gold. I mean, my dressing room, the food and beverage in my dressing room was unbelievable, and everything about it. It was a great experience, and the concert was fabulous. Georgia was fabulous. They loved her. She had done China several times before this, and she was like the second most popular singer in China next to Andrea Bocelli.
Wow.
So, she was very, very high up the rung. And so she was well received. And so it was great being with Georgia. And she was on my podcast too sometime last spring. So really wonderful gal. And I did concerts with her in Montreal, all through Canada. We did some in the U.S. too. But it's a funny story. I was the music director for Patrizio Buone. And we're doing two concerts, one in Cleveland, Ohio, one in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the Benedum Theater. big orchestra, 31-piece orchestra. And Georgia was also, Patrizio at the time was a Universal recording artist, and Georgia was also Universal Canada, because she, at that time, had moved from Tuscany to Montreal. And so she was a Universal artist, and I got a call from Patrizio's manager saying, we're going to have a support act for these two concerts, so would you be willing to conduct her show? I said, who is it? She said, Georgia Fumanti. Well, I'd never heard of her. I said, that's fine. Get me the music so I know what I'm doing, So the next thing, her manager calls me, sends me all the charts. I prepare for it, do the shows. And when I did the concert, he said, Georgia loved working with you. And if we do some more concerts in the United States, would you be willing to conduct them for her? And I said, of course. I said, as long as I'm available, I'd be happy to do that. Guess what? In 6 months or 4 months from that, they called me. In the first concert, said, we have a concert in Shanghai, China. Would you be willing to go to Shanghai and do this concert with Georgia? I said, what part of the U.S. is that?
Again, a testament to your great work.
Well,
True. That's wonderful. So they treated you like a rock star there, Vito.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I heard that you had in your contract no brown M&Ms.
No brown M&Ms. I like only blue M&Ms.
There you go.
The other moment that I would tell you, I did several concerts in Vienna. In fact, I toured all of Austria. And in Vienna one time, it might have been the first time I was there, and it was called the Stadthall, which means a state hall. And it's a beautiful concert hall, red velvet seats and all that. And I'll never forget, first two parts of this story. First part, I was still teaching at the time for the West Mifflin Area School District, and I had a flip phone. You remember the old flip phones?
Oh, yeah.
So I had a flip phone, and I just happened to walk in my office, because I was head of the music department. I had a pretty big office there. I walked in, I sat down, and my flip phone rings, and I don't recognize. It's like a really weird set of numbers. I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I better get it, So I answer it, and the guy on the other end says, this is Karl Haas, I think was his name. He says, I'm the promoter for the concert that you're going to be doing in Vienna. And I'm going through the rider of your contract, and I see that your piano of choice is a Steinway D. He said, and the alternate would be a Yamaha. He said, would a Bosendorfer 250 be okay?
That's a real slouch.
I said, that would be just fine.
That's great.
Vienna on stage in the afternoon. Now, you realize I'm there before anybody else, just with the tech crew, because I want to make sure, part of my responsibility as music director, make sure everything is right, the technical gear, the microphones, the monitors, everything is where it's supposed to be. So I'm standing there and I'm looking at this Bosendorfer piano, and I said, oh man, could I cut this up and put it in my suitcase and take it home, And then I'm looking out at this theater, and it's so beautiful. Red velvet seats, and I mean, it was just gorgeous. And I thought to myself, my parents both died in the early 90s, and I thought about my mother and dad, and I thought, boy, if they could see where I am now, playing that little accordion. It was so big for me, the smallest accordion you could get when I was 4 years old. My dad had to tie the straps with a handkerchief to hold it on me, And I said, if they could see me now at the Stadthall in Vienna, Austria, getting ready, preparing for a performance. So.
Well, what's wonderful about music? Music crosses all borders. It is the universal language.
Universal language, absolutely.
So you can go anywhere in the world and play music.
That's right.
And it's all good, right?
That's right.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
You may not be able to talk to them about having a hamburger, but you can make music with them.
I was talking about that with my last guest, Dave Powers. We played in Hong Kong. The people we played for, nobody spoke English. It was And we played for about 70,000 people over 5 days and couldn't communicate until we started playing music. And then we communicated perfectly with them. So I'm just always amazed and astounded at the power of music.
Yeah,
It's
I agree.
pretty cool. What a blessing to be involved in it, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Vito, you served as music director for several international artists, and you've already mentioned Giorgio Framonti and Patrizio Buoni. And now we have Marco Fiorante, right?
Right.
I have to say, Vito, you gave me the hardest names of anybody so far. I'm having a field day. And then there's also Ferhat Göçer. What's it like working with these folks, and what did you take away from being the musical director for them?
Well, I was not the musical director for Ferhat Göçer. We performed on the same concert. It was for the Turkish Air Force. Okay. And it was interesting. That was an interesting time, too, because it was in Istanbul. And Ferhat Göçer is a doctor, too, another guy that's a doctor and a musician. He's a singer. And he's kind of like the Billy Joel of Turkey, if you will. And he had his own nightclub, and that's where we rehearsed. And he had his own musicians. So we used his musicians, and a lot of them had Turkish instruments, which were very different than our typical Western instruments. And, you know, it was a great experience to just meet these musicians that come from a completely different culture, but we respect each other and we respect what each other does. What was interesting, we did this concert in Istanbul. When I go to a different country, you probably do this too. You at least want to be able to say hello, thank you, you know, how are you doing, or something like that in their language. So it just so happened, I'm flying over to Istanbul and I'm sitting on the plane with a girl, young girl that is from Ankara, which is the capital of Turkey. She's going back to see her family. I lived in South Park, she lived in Bethel Park, which were two communities that were adjacent. So we got to talking, and I says, you know, how do you say hello in Turkish? She said, merhaba, merhaba. I said, oh, okay, merhaba. And how do you say thank you? She tells me. So I land in Istanbul, and I go out to where I get my luggage, and I see a sign, you know, Vito DiSalvo. And there's a fellow there. And he says, I says, I'm Vito. He says, oh, come here, come here. He spoke English. My God, he spoke English. So I said, good. He said, the major from the Air Force came to pick you up, to take you to the hotel and make sure everything is good for you. I said, okay. So he said, as soon as we get your luggage, he said, we'll meet the major, and then he's going to take you to the hotel. So when I met the major, he's standing there, full uniform, shake his hand. I said, merhaba. And he started talking Turkish to me like, ba, ba, ba.
No. Oh, no. Backfired.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. Did he figure out eventually that you couldn't speak Turkish?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Wow.
And we do the concert, and at the end of the concert, the general of the Air Force comes up on stage, and so I'm with Patrizio Buoni doing his show, and of course Ferhat Göçer's there with his. So he gives both of them 24 red roses, and he comes over to me with 24 white roses, and presents me with 24 white roses. I was like, wow, you know, the general from the Air Force of Turkey, you know, it's pretty cool. That was a moment, and it was just, it was all interesting. And after having my band for 49 years and doing what I did in my own little world, and then after I retired from teaching, I was able to go and do all these other performances and work with other artists. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was 99% of it was just fun and musical, and you got to experience different music, different cultures, and that's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful thing.
So, Vito, your original music, and I might add your great original music, has been featured in The Sopranos, the movie Eat, Pray, Love, and you scored a full film called That's Amore. What does it feel like hearing your music in those situations? And just tell me about the whole story.
Well, it's a real kick to hear your music and, go into a movie theater and hear your, watch a movie and hear your music. And it's really a kick, I gotta say. It's quite gratifying. Eat, Pray, Love, I got a call. Actually, I was on vacation in the Bahamas, and I got an email from someone that was inquiring about who the copyright owner of this Tarantella Americana was. And I said, that would be me, corresponding. That's how it started. And then eventually worked with Sony Films, and they licensed that piece, which was an original piece that first recording, 1987. This is 2010. So 1987, and then another song on that same album was what they call the Wedding Tarantella or the Neapolitan Tarantella. And so my group, obviously I didn't write that, but my group recorded it. So they wanted both of those songs. Now typically when you hire a composer for a movie, the director will say, look, this is what I have in mind for this scene. This is what I have in mind. And they'll come up with what they call temporary music. In other words, to say to the composer, this is what I want. It sounds like this. I want it to sound like this, but I want original, And when he found my music, and I'm not sure, at the time our daughter was working for us and just sending out CDs to different, producers and directors and things. So probably that's how they got it. But when they heard my music, they said to the composer of the film, they said, you know what, you don't have to write for this particular thing because I want to use this recording and I want to use this recording, which was very unusual, So they had to come to me to license because I owned the copyright, and I owned for a Tarantella Americana, I owned the copyright and the master recording rights. And then for the Neapolitan Tarantella, I owned the master recording rights. The copyright, it was already public domain. So there was no copyright issue at all there. But they had to come to me to license all this music. So they did, and we, worked it all out. And it was a phenomenal thing because it's a major film company. So we did that, and like I say, I think the Tarantella Americana is maybe 45 seconds of it, and the other one was maybe 15 seconds, 20 seconds. That's typical, on anything that you do like this kind of thing. You're going to get, if you get a few seconds here or a few seconds there, but they're licensing it, and then of course there are residuals after that. Still to this day, I get residuals. That was from 2010. One of the things we talked about was about the quality of the work that you do. And when you record something, people's careers have been made or broken by what they put on tape. Yeah. And so it's so important that when you record something that it is right, it is good, it is sound. So this is a testament, again, to my work where 1987, I made a recording, and in 2010, here's a major film company that wants to license 2 of the songs off of that album. So that tells me that the work that we did was pretty doggone good. It was solid. It was not shabby. So it was good. And so that's a very astute lesson to learn about recording, because you have to do your best work all the time.
Yes. That album, did you do your own mixing and that sort of stuff?
No, that album, the very first We Three album. So I did all the pre-production in my studio because I did use some like MIDI parts for different things that weren't live. And so I had all that. Went into Aircraft Studios in Dormont.
Barney Lee.
And Barney Lee,
Yeah.
my engineer for Bravo Italia, the first album. He engineered it, and they mixed it and mastered it right there and everything. So that was how that one went, you know.
Oh, that's great. I've recorded for Barney. I did some commercials over there.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Great
Yeah.
guy. And then the next album we did there was 2 years later, 89, our E Compati album. And Ed Dukestein was working there under Barney Lee. And Ed he assigned Ed to do my project and got to talking with Ed. Ed had just come off the road with Gloria Estefan and Miami Sound Machine. He was her monitor engineer. And they were both at the University of Miami together. Of course, they were undergrads. I was graduate and many years before them. But anyhow, Ed did that album. And when we were working on it, I asked him if he would be interested in engineering for the band for the live shows. And I'd say from 86 on, we always had engineers with our band.
That's great. I just wondered how much of the work, because I know you have your studio, and I assume you're laying tracks at your studio, and how much of the stuff you actually mix yourself.
Eventually we did, when Ed came on board, Ed Dukestein came on board, then the third project, which was Salute, 1993, when we did that album, we did everything in my studio. So at that point, I didn't need an outdoor studio, another studio outside. We did everything. And Ed, we had all the equipment, we had all the resources to do everything right there. And from then on, everything was done in our. Now, later on, I did send some things to be mastered outside in New York. My friend Jim Anderson in New York and his wife Ulrika, they did some mastering for me on some of my symphony is one. And then my retrospective album, which is a double CD of all my original music, Italian type music and things. Yeah. And then my solo piano album, Inner Space, they mastered that as well. But it was recorded and mixed in my studio.
Again, I've heard your music, and it's really wonderful. I love listening to it. In fact, my wife and I were sitting around listening to it. And, you know, I mean, I'm half Italian, half Irish. Kay is half Italian, and then she's kind of a mutt otherwise. She has a bunch of other parts, but we love Italian music. I just love hearing that stuff. And there's something, actually what it does is it takes me to a place I'd love to be. And I can't be there, but I'd love to be there.
Sure.
You know?
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've never been to Italy. And I would love to go. And one of my dreams was actually to play in Italy. And I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not done playing possibly, but you know, it's one of those things. I always wanted to go to Italy and play in Italy because I just am fascinated by it.
You would be a big hit there because they love American music. They love American blues. They love American. You know, there's an artist, Zucchero.
Oh yeah, I love him.
Yeah, it means sugar, right?
Sugar in Italian, yeah.
So Zucchero, you know, like big Italian rock star, you know, and he'd been to this country. Actually, I have a poster signed by him. You know, that's the music that they really like. When I was over there a couple times in the early, like maybe mid-90s or late 90s, they were into like Pink Floyd and all these Billy Joel and all these American artists.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm expecting to hear all this nice Italian music, and I didn't hear any of it. It was all American music, you know.
There's a great producer. He's a guitar player. In fact, he's produced some of the Zucchero stuff. He played with Zucchero. His name's Corrado Rastici. So if you're ever over there and you run into him, he's a fabulous musician. Corrado Rastici.
I've heard that name.
So, Vito, you actually toured as a pianist with the Lettermen, and they're a great group. What did that experience add to your musical journey?
Well, I grew up hearing a lot of their music, so it was like a real fun thing to sit there and hear them sing and play with them. One of the things that I learned from them was really, everything is a learning experience at some point. And one of the things that I learned was amazing to me was sound check. Now, sound check, for people that don't know, it's when an artist is going to go in before the concert starts and they check the microphones and they make sure they can hear what they need to hear, et cetera, right? And so the sound check with the Lettermen was literally 10 minutes. And most artists, and I've been with some artists that sound check was an hour, and they would wear their voice out, and I mean, it was like almost to the point of ridiculousness. I went in with the Lettermen, and they would walk on stage for sound check, and they knew exactly what to say, and they knew every time they sang exactly the same excerpts of songs to check that covered everything that they had to sing, that whether it was soft, loud, whatever. And boom, it was done in 10 minutes. They were on and off stage in 10 minutes. And I thought to myself, that's the level of professionalism that you have to achieve when you're doing this kind of work, right? First of all, you don't want to mess up your voice for the concert. You have a show you're going to put on. And secondly, you want to be able to relax before the show. You don't want to spend a lot of time on stage for a sound check. It should be in and out. Right. And they were absolutely the best at it. I couldn't believe it. I learned that, and I try to encourage other artists along the way. Some took heed and some didn't, so.
Yeah. What a great group, the harmonies, all that stuff. I asked a guy if he knew you. A small world that it is. I just recorded this last week. I put some guitar tracks on a tune for a guy. He owns a studio in Newton Falls, Ohio. It's called Toontown Recordings. Guy's name is Mike Talanka, and he actually toured with the Lettermen as a sound man, but he said he did not know you. He wasn't there when you were there.
That long, maybe a year and a half.
Okay.
Maybe 2 years at the most. Yeah.
Yeah, but you'd love Mike. He's a great guy. And I told him he would love you, but you guys did not cross paths. But small world. I mean, I just recorded guitar for this guy that toured with the same folks that you did. So crazy.
One of the shows we did was I think it was Dayton, Ohio. And it was a concert it was an outdoor concert, and it was the Lettermen and the Beach Boys. And that was an interesting thing too, because it was not too long after I had that song, the music in Eat, Pray, Love. And one of the Beach Boys, he wasn't an original, but Bruce Johnston.
Yeah.
Bruce Johnston. He was not the original, but he was shortly after they got underway, the Beach Boys, and he's been with them ever since. And he's the guy that wrote the song that Barry Manilow had a hit, I Write the Songs. I write the songs that make the chorus cry. And that's a huge hit. I mean, he must have made tons of money with that, And so, anyhow, he said to me, Vito, he said, how did you get that music in the movies? I said, Bruce, I says, you have more pull in Hollywood than I do. I said, it should be nothing for you to make those contacts, So anyhow, that's all that came about.
Vito, you now host and produce a podcast called Memories of a Musician, which I might add, I was on as a guest, and I was grateful to be there with you. What inspired you to start it, and what kinds of stories do you most enjoy sharing there?
Well, I started it because I'm like you. I've had some health issues. I'm not performing anymore at the time. I'm not teaching. I'm just writing, and I'm doing this podcast. And so I was sitting here in the living room looking at my piano one day, and I was thinking about all of the shows that I did over my lifetime, right? And it's a lot of years. And I was thinking about, all the places I've been and all the musicians I worked with and all the things I did. And I thought, I'm not the only one that has this story to share. All the musicians I know have a story to share. They all have their own journey and how they got started and where they went from there and who they worked with and who they performed with and where they toured and all these different things. I said, it would be nice to share this with other people. Maybe an audience would enjoy hearing this, That's how I came up with the idea, memories of a musician, to do that. And that's how it all started. And I started in January of 2025, so it's just about a year and a half, not quite. And I think this week coming up is like episode 62 or 63. Yeah. So.
And that's a lot of work because I know I've just started doing these. I think I started the Toneful Tuesdays thing about 10 or 11 weeks ago. And I can tell you it's a lot of work. I've been interviewing people that I have a connection with, and which is why I reached out to you because you're wonderful. And I'm so happy to have you here with me today. But your show is wonderful. And I'm going to urge my people that come to listen to this show to go to Vito's YouTube channel and subscribe to his wonderful show because there's great guests on it, lots of interesting conversation, and I guarantee you it will be time well spent there at Vito's channel.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that.
So, looking back over your career, what moments make you feel the most grateful?
Grateful. All the teachers that taught me, I'm grateful to all of them because there were many. I don't want to mention names because there's too many, but there were a lot of teachers that shaped my musical career, my musical knowledge, my family, the support I got from my family. I'm very grateful. I remember when you're a kid and you're in the band in high school, your mother and dad come to the concert. I was 40 years old and I was conducting a high school orchestra. And my mother and dad were still sitting in the audience.
Oh, that's great.
That's family support right there,
You bet.
And I was very lucky that I had that kind of support. And then, of course, my wife, the support that she gave me, she was always there. This year we'll be married 53 years. And one day I was, I just came out and I said to her, Lana, how did we stay married this long? Because, I wasn't home a lot. I was teaching full time and I was a musician full time. And I was playing hundreds gigs a year, 120 gigs a year. And I wasn't around a lot. And she basically raised the kids and did all that stuff. So I was very, very grateful that I had a good woman by my side, all the time.
You do, and I have to say that I do as well. And it takes a special person to put up with the likes of us, huh?
That's right. It's very special.
We are at the last question, Vito.
Okay.
After everything you've done in music already, what still excites you the most about creating and performing today?
Well, performing-wise, the two of my artists that I was music director for, the Sicilian Tenors and Giorgio Fumati, both bug me often about coming back to work for them. I don't think it's going to happen because, for one thing, I'm still challenged playing the way I used to play, and I won't go out if I'm not playing at the level that I want to be playing.
I understand exactly what you're talking about.
Number two, traveling is not very fun anymore. It used to be really a lot of fun traveling. It's not fun anymore, and it's tough. And it's tough for me to manage getting around like that too. So performing is pretty much out. My future is in writing because I still want to write more. The symphony was, I wrote one piece after the symphony. I was commissioned by the Three Rivers Saxophone Quartet, Marino Galuzzo, the whole gang, Mike Jacob and Warren Yeckel. These guys I went to Duquesne with, and they commissioned me for their 50th anniversary concert to write a piece for them. And I wrote a piece called Divertimento for saxophone quartet. And they premiered it, and this was in, I want to say in June of 23, I think they premiered it. And that was after the symphony. And so I do want to keep writing. I love it. I love writing. It's very gratifying. And I always said, if there were three things that I did, I taught music, I played music, and I wrote music. And I put them in an order of gratification. I always I say that composing music was first, because when you walk into you labor for weeks, months, years over music, writing music. And what I didn't tell you about the symphony is I wrote it in, 6 or 7 weeks, but it took over 2 years to edit the scores and parts with a great editor, Paul Silver, who was a violist with the Pittsburgh Symphony for like 38 years. So he was an orchestral musician at the highest level. And he was my editor. With him, it still took over 2 years to edit that score and parts to get everything perfect. So if you hand it to an orchestra, they can make it sound the way the composer meant it to sound. So writing is something that when you walk in a concert hall and you hear your composition, it's like something you gave birth to this piece. It's like, it's hard to describe the level of gratification that gives you. The second thing is that education. I taught a lot of kids, hundreds and hundreds and maybe thousands of kids in my life. And when kids come back to you 20, 25, 30 years later after their graduation from school, and they come back and say, Mr. DiSalvo, I just want to thank you for what you did for me. It's like, it makes you feel like, you didn't make a lot of money doing that job. We got paid pretty fairly at the end, but not making really not a lot of money. It wasn't about the money, but working with kids and seeing them grow musically and seeing them with the things that they accomplished was amazing. And that's very gratifying. And then the third thing was performing. And performing is when you're standing on stage and you've got hundreds or thousands of people clapping and cheering you on. It could be 50 people cheering you on. It's a wonderful, wonderful moment. But when they walk out of that hall, it's over. It's basically over, and you're like, well, can we do this again? I've got to get back on stage again and got to play again so that we get that high again, with people applauding you and things. So, that's kind of the order that I put things in as far as gratification. But in terms of what I want to do, whatever time God gives me left is probably just writing music and doing my podcast. I'm having fun with it because I'm connecting with great people like you and so many great musicians and people and some of the people that I played with all over the world, and it's just so much fun. And hearing the stories of everybody and how they came through and how they got to where they got, it's interesting. So I have enjoyed all of that, and hopefully I can write a few more notes down on paper. That would be my goal.
Well, I'm going to encourage you to continue to do that because we are all blessed by you, by hearing you on your podcast, by hearing your great music. And I guarantee you, all of the students that came into contact with you through the years carry those influences with them into their everyday life, whether they're playing music or just doing their job, whatever it is, or being with their family. The mentorship that they had from you was invaluable, and your life is just is your testament Vito. So I'm very thankful that you came on to the show, and I'm thankful you're my friend.
Oh, thank you, Tony, and thank you for having me. I appreciate it so much, and it's interesting to be on the other side of the coin here. And you know, you're a terrific musician, and I enjoy hearing you perform, and I hope I get to hear you again play soon.
Thank you so much, and ditto on the musicianship and all that. And we're friends for life now, man.
Oh yeah,
you're not getting rid of me.
Likewise.
All right. Thank you. And again, I'm going to put the links, folks, so you can go visit Vito. You should really do yourself a favor and listen to his great music and check out his podcast, because you won't regret it.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it very much.
Okay. God bless you, Vito. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that time with Vito. He's a great guy and a really, really accomplished musician. And I'm really very thankful that I am friends with him and do know him. All right, I'm going to say hello to some folks in the chat. Give me a second. I got to get this so I can read a little bit. Let's see, I'll scroll back. Hey, Sarah, Adventures with Sarah. Thank you for coming by. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I hope you're having a good time. Dory's in the house. Dory. And I did see Mike Paraska was in the house earlier. And for those of you who hung the whole time, you rock. Because that was lengthy. Some of these are. We had a lot to talk about. So let's see. Dory's here from Chicago. Wayne still has her beat because he's here from the UK. I don't know where Sarah's from. I think I am from Mars. I think sometimes I feel that way anyway. Let's see here. Yeah, and I will be sleeping with one eye open because my wife is Sicilian, just so you know. I don't get a lot of rest. Somebody said there was it was Wayne. Mariah Carey joke. I don't know what that is, but I did see something funny. Mary, my name is Michael, when Vito brought up the guy from China. That was quick, Mary. Actually, I should say, that wasn't Mary. That was Candy. That was Candy. Sorry about that, Candy. Mary said something else. There's just a lot of comments. It's hard to read. Anyway, so that was Vito DiSalvo, and he's a great guy. He's super talented. So get over there and check out his site. I'm going to give you a couple links. I did do an interview with him. It was actually the first thing I did when we moved back to the area. It was like the first interview I got to do. My gear was hardly set up or anything, but I got to do it with Vito, and it was great. And I promised him, I told him he was going to be on my show eventually. And I held him to it, and he showed up because he's a good guy. And so I gave you the link to the interview with Vito, and then here's his website, and you got to go check out his symphony because his symphony is awesome. And I'm giving you a link to it. And he has a bunch of other music, so make sure you go to his YouTube channel and just snoop around. You'll find all kinds of stuff there. So I have a question. My question is this. Do you guys have any questions? He seemed great. He is great, Dory. He's really a really cool guy. And again, I'm just very blessed to know him. I'm so blessed to know a bunch of great musicians. Next week's Billy Price. And Billy, man, he's a legend in the Pittsburgh area and beyond. And I fortunately was able to play some shows with Billy. In fact, I'm going to tell you a story right now. I know we've been on a while, but I played a show with Billy in San Antonio, Texas. And it was great. And we were with this band called Osmotley. And they were really a cool band. So we played the show. My plane flight, we had a layover in Memphis. Well, actually, it wasn't a layover. We were supposed to have a connecting flight. My wife was with me, so she went on the trip with me. And the weather became inclement, and we ended up missing our connecting flight and had to stay in Memphis. And then the hotels, most of them were sold out. We found a Holiday Inn in Memphis that had some vacancies. So we get a cab. At that time, it was cab. It wasn't Uber or Lyft. It was a cab, taxi cab. Got a taxi to the Holiday Inn. And we get there, and there's a guy dressed like a skunk that's outside of the hotel. And I thought, well, that's kind of odd, but okay. So then we went into the building, and we checked in, and then we saw more people dressed like animals. And then we got on the elevator, and there was another guy dressed like a skunk, and he not only was dressed like a skunk, he had these pheromones, so he smelled. I kid you not. And it was bizarre. Excuse me. So then we went up to where our room was, and there was a balcony. And it overlooked I guess it's kind of a party area or some common area. And there was a volleyball net with tons of people dressed up as animals. So my wife and I ended up at a furry convention by mistake. And it was pretty strange for us because, you know, I'm Italian. I'm a little hairy, but that's as far as it goes. Anyway, yeah, it was pretty weird. It was pretty weird. So that was my trip to San Antonio with Billy. But anyway, he's going to be on next week. He's great. I think you're really going to enjoy that episode. And a bunch of cool guests coming up, including my friend Curtis Swift, who I did see showed up. There he is. There he is. He called them the Furbies. Yeah. Yeah, Curtis is in Texas now, and he's going to be on in a few weeks with me. And we are going to talk about great stuff, old times. We're going to talk about this and this, because Curtis has actually been on my last 2 CDs, and we met a long time ago. And we met, and I'm going to tell you the story on that show of how we met, because it was pretty interesting. We met, you know, I've talked about this before on here, that life is full of silver linings if you see them. And meeting Curtis was a silver lining. It was a stressful situation that turned into a lifelong friendship. So I'm so blessed to have him as a friend. He's a great musician, great person, and we're going to have fun because we have some funny stories to tell you, and he'll be on. But next week, Billy Price, then Curtis, and then I have to make a change here because I don't remember what my order is at this point. Then it is Reggie Jackson. And he's not the baseball player, not him. It's Reggie Jackson, the great drummer. He's awesome. And he and I played together. We've only played together once, I believe, once or twice live, but we're on a bunch of recordings together. In fact, some of you heard us together last week on some of the Dave Powers stuff. That was Reggie playing drums. He's great. Great guy, too. So then I have my longtime friend, Jamie Glaser, and we have a funny story on how we met. Played with Jean-Luc Ponty, Chick Corea, John Anderson from Yes. So, and done tons of sessions, written all kinds of music. He's written all kinds of music that's been used in TV shows and commercials and music for the Super Bowl. I mean, all kinds of stuff like that. So great guy, great musician. It's going to be fun. And then after that, Tom Hemby. Tom Hemby is also another wonderful guitarist. He's played with Amy Grant, Vince Gill, done tons of sessions. His family's really talented. He has a super talented daughter named Natalie. Look her up, Natalie Hemby. Great songwriter, great songwriter. So Tom will be on. I love the guy. After that, I also love this guy, Gumby Ortiz. Man, is he great. He's funny. He's got energy out the wazoo. He's been Al Di Meola's right-hand man. And Al Di Meola is a major guitar picker, for sure. Then after that, Bobby Floyd, who's really wonderful, wonderful keyboard player, plays the heck out of B3. And I don't know if you remember last week, I showed a clip of Dave Powers doing My Sweet Lord, the George Harrison tune. And both Reggie and Bobby were on that. And Bobby was the guy going crazy at the end of the song. And that's him, man. He's great. Played with Ray Charles, played with Count Basie, the Count Basie Orchestra. And then my dear friend Don Alico Jr., we go way back. He and his dad are wonderful musicians. And years ago, we did a father and son night at the Balcony in Shadyside. So it was Don Alico Sr., Don Alico Jr., my father, and myself playing at the Balcony, all of us together. And it was a night to remember, for sure. So that's Don Alico. All right, I'm back. And Sarah, you'll be on a trip next week. Well, have a great trip. You know, all of the streams, they're staying up. Now, tonight, I didn't tell you this. I hope I'm going to be okay. But right after the first clip aired of Vito's music in a movie film, I got a big yellow sign pop up that said, "You are using somebody else's material, blah, blah, blah." And it looked serious. And then it happened again for the other film clips. So I hope I'm not going to get a strike or two. That would be terrible. I'm okay with copyright claims, which I figured I would get. But I hope it's not going to be a strike. I've never gotten that so far. So that was a little stressful. So we'll see what happens. They said they actually could either suspend the stream or pull it down. So we'll see. I was leading to Sarah that you can come back and watch these at any time because I'm leaving them up as long as YouTube doesn't pull them down or I have my channel shut down for 3 strikes and you're out. So I'm hoping not, and my intent is not to do copyright infringement. That's for sure. I'm just looking at this stuff as fair use because I had the composer of the music on, and that's what he sent me to have played. So we'll see. It's complicated. This YouTube thing's complicated. All right, so I'm going to say hello. If we have any more questions or... I hope I can tell them that I had permission, Candy. Yes, I hope so. You know, it's hard now. Try getting tech support. It's AI bots. I had a problem with a company called TuneCore, which I think I'm going to make a video of. It had to do with my streaming, and it was just insane. It took a month, and I never did get things resolved. And it would take a week for them to get back to me, and then it would be an AI chatbot response. And there is a point where it's so frustrating. Okay, Scott Lust, great interview, brought back some amazing memories from Duquesne University. Thank you. Oh, that's wonderful, Scott. Yeah, that's a great school. You know, I was fortunate. I used to do some guitar clinics over there. They had a thing called the Summer Guitar Workshops every year. And it was so cool. And I think it was mostly Mark Cook's doing, who's a great guitar player and a great guy. And also Bill Pearce. And then probably Ken Karsh had stuff to do with it. But I think Mark and Bill were mostly the guys. But I used to be there. I was there several years doing clinics there. So it was always cool. And I have to thank Duquesne University for that. Okay, Wayne, how does copyright work? Oh. Well, Wayne, you know, there's ways that you can do it. I would suggest now I don't know who you go to in the UK, but in the United States, we have a copyright office that is in DC. And I just went through that process, copywriting all my new tone poem stuff. So I'm assuming you have an agency that's like that. But in the United States, it used to be, I mean, I used to write charts for every song, you know. And now you can actually, there's a form called Form SR for sound recording. So you can send in the sound recording and do the whole batch of songs. You have to list them individually, but it's quicker and it's cheaper than doing them one song at a time. So that's how I did the last one. So in the UK, I'm assuming there's something similar to that. All right, let's see. If I miss anybody ever on here, it's not, it's not on purpose. I'm just missing you because there's a lot of comments and I don't always see it. So I apologize if I miss anybody. All right, there you go. Curtis and Scott Lusk have connected. Anyway, thank you guys for coming by. And I'm really blessed. I've met some great people this time around. I used to do these shows during the pandemic, and they were called Woodshed Wednesdays. But I moved my show to Tuesdays because Vito has a show on every week, and I felt like I did a few Woodshed Wednesdays, and then I discontinued them because I didn't want them to conflict with him, because we know a lot of the same people, and he's a great guy, and so I thought, well, what can I do? So my show now is Toneful Tuesdays, and I have discontinued Woodshed Wednesdays. So anyway, hey, Sarah, thanks again for coming by, and enjoy your trip. Yes, the chat does fly by. Candy, it does. All right. So thanks, you guys. I really appreciate it. And again, I hope I didn't offend anybody with my sombrero and the Mexican hat dance, because again, anybody that knows me personally, I love everybody. I'm really, I'm a peace loving guy, and I want everybody to get along. So anything I say or do is definitely in jest. If I'm just a silly guy that never means to offend anybody. Got it? All right. So again, I have my store. I have some merchandise there. I'll put some links in the comments. Actually, if you go back to the videos, all of them, I have links in there. They're permanently there. And there's my store and my website and all that stuff. So you can get those links there. Also, I have Amazon affiliate links. I'm going to be doing some demos of some of the gear. A lot of it's the gear I use musically and stuff. And I have guitars, like the guitar strings I use, that sort of stuff. So if you're in need of strings and you look and you see the gauge that I use is cool for you, if you scroll through, you'll see my links to strings and that sort of stuff. if you buy them, then I get a small percentage. I mean, it's small, but it helps keep my channel alive, and any of that stuff helps. Merchandise, CDs, digital downloads, all that stuff. So anyway, God bless you all. I had a really nice time, and thanks for sticking around. Those of you who hung in there the whole time, you get extra credit. You do. You get extra credit. All right. Take care, everybody. See you next week.